Welcome back to the channel, USA Coins 69, coin collectors, treasure hunters, and history lovers. If you've ever held a quarter in your hand and thought, it's just 25 cents, then buckle up, because today's story will change the way you look at pocket change forever. Today, we're digging deep into the remarkable story of the 1965 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. You may have passed by one in your change, overlooked it in an old drawer, or maybe even dropped one into a vending machine. But what if I told you that this coin, in rare cases, could be worth an amount so large it might make your jaw drop? Stick around, because this isn't just a coin, it's a historical turning point, a collector's dream, and a hidden treasure that could be worth far more than you'd ever expect. Let's start with the world in 1965. America was in the midst of massive cultural and economic transformation. The civil rights movement was in full force. The Beatles were rocking the charts. The Vietnam War was escalating. And perhaps most importantly for coin collectors, something big happened at the U.S. Mint, something that would change American coinage forever. Up until 1964, quarters were made of 90% silver. But in 1965, due to rising silver prices and hoarding behavior, the U.S. Treasury made a game-changing decision. It removed silver from the quarter entirely. From that point forward, quarters would be made of a copper-nickel clad composition instead of silver. That makes the 1965 quarter the very first clad quarter in U.S. history. And while it may look identical to earlier silver quarters at a glance, its composition, minting process, and role in coinage history make it a fascinating collectible, especially when certain rare features come into play. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. On the obverse, or front side, we see the stately profile of George Washington, facing left. Above him, the bold word, Liberty. Beneath his chin, the phrase, "In God We Trust." And below that, the date, 1965. Now, here's something you may not know: 1965 quarters do not have a mint mark. That's right. Whether they were minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, no mint marks were placed on quarters that year due to the transition from silver to clad coinage and the mint's attempt to curb coin hoarding. So, if you ever come across a 1965 quarter with a mint mark like D or S, you may want to grab a magnifying glass, because what you found might be extremely rare, possibly even a minting error or transitional coin. Now flip the coin over and admire the reverse side. A powerful image of the American eagle, wings spread wide, sits proudly on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing America's strength and readiness to defend its values. Beneath it are two olive branches representing peace. Around the edges, United States of America, and quarter dollar, with E pluribus unum, tucked in above the eagle's head. It's classic. It's iconic. And, for most people, it's just a piece of everyday change. But here's where things get interesting: most 1965 quarters are extremely common. The U.S. Mint produced over 1.8 billion of them that year. That's billion, with a B. They were the workhorses of commerce, tossed in pockets, fed into parking meters, and spent without a second thought. But, in the vast ocean of ordinary, a few quarters managed to stand out. These are the ones that collectors dream about. You see, during the transition from silver to clad coins, some error coins slipped through the cracks. There are rumors, and confirmed examples, of 1965 quarters being accidentally struck on 90% silver planchets left over from 1964. These transitional errors are like buried treasure. They look nearly identical to regular clad coins, but if you weigh them, they come in heavier, around 6.25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams for clad quarters. That slight difference? It could mean thousands, or more. Then there are the other varieties: double dies, off-center strikes, misaligned dies, and strikes on the wrong planchets, like pennies or foreign coins. These mistakes are so rare that when discovered, collectors are willing to pay an absolute premium to own one. And if that weren't enough, a tiny percentage of 1965 quarters were struck with extremely sharp detail and preserved in perfect condition, never entering circulation. These coins, graded MS-65 or higher, with bright, original luster, are now worth far more than their face value simply because of their rarity in such perfect state. Now, let's talk grading. Coins are rated on a 70-point scale, where MS 70 is a flawless mint state. Most coins that entered circulation would fall somewhere below MS 60, while coins that were preserved in rolls, proof sets, or never used could grade higher. An MS 65 or above 1965 quarter with extraordinary strike quality? That's when the value truly starts skyrocketing. But what if you have one of those rare transitional errors? Or a pristine example of a 1965 quarter in top-tier condition? What kind of money are we talking about? Let's say you come across a silver 1965 quarter, one that was mistakenly struck using a leftover silver planchet from 1964. If it's authenticated and graded by a trusted service like PCGS or NGC, you might be in for the surprise of a lifetime, because believe it or not, one of these rare 1965 Washington quarters, struck on the wrong metal, preserved in stunning condition, and verified by experts, has been valued and sold for a breathtaking $165,000. Yes, you heard that right. A coin that was supposed to be worth 25 cents, could now be worth $165,000. In the collector's market. That's more than a luxury car. More than a college degree. More than many people make in an entire year, and it might be hiding in your pocket change. Or sitting at the bottom of a dusty jar on your shelf. This is the magic of numismatics, where history, rarity, and curiosity collide. And with the 1965 quarter being the first of its kind in a new era of American coinage, it holds a special place in the hearts of collectors everywhere. So here's your challenge. The next time you get change at the store, take a closer look. Check the date. Weigh it if you have to. Examine it for unusual colors, errors, or markings. Because what seems like just another quarter might actually be a lost piece of American history, waiting to be rediscovered. Today, we're going to take a closer look at one of the most overlooked coins in modern American currency, one that could easily pass through your hands in change without ever catching your eye. But behind its humble appearance, this coin holds secrets that could be worth a small fortune. That's right. We're diving deep into the mysterious and often misunderstood 1982 Washington quarter dollar, a coin with more twists and surprises than most people ever realized. At first glance, it looks like any other quarter, 25 cents, silver in color, George Washington on the front, the iconic eagle on the back. But don't be fooled. The 1982 quarter hides an incredible story, tied to American history, the U.S. Mint's budget cuts, unexpected errors, and a secret that could make your coin worth tens of thousands, or even more. So grab your magnifying glass, sit back, and let's uncover the hidden value of this seemingly ordinary coin. Let's go back in time to the early 1980s. The country was recovering from an economic recession, inflation was high, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to cut costs. As part of their strategy, the Mint made a bold move. They stopped producing uncirculated coin sets in 1982. That may not seem like a big deal, but for coin collectors, it was a game changer. Because no official mint sets were issued that year, the only way to get 1982 quarters was through circulation. And what happens to circulated coins? They get scratched, worn, and damaged. Very few remain in pristine, uncirculated condition today. But it gets even more interesting. 1982 was also a year of major design and production transitions at the Mint. The U.S. quarter had been made of a copper-nickel clad composition since 1965, but the minting quality varied during this period. Some 1982 quarters were poorly struck. Others were produced on improperly prepared planchets. Some even had inconsistent weights or missing details, and then there's the mint mark, or the lack thereof. Quarters minted in Philadelphia typically didn't carry a mint mark before 1980, but starting in 1980, Philadelphia coins began bearing a small P. However, in 1982, due to various production inconsistencies and machine changes, some quarters were struck with weak or missing mint marks. Others had off-center strikes, double dies, or were even struck on planchets meant for other denominations, like dimes or foreign coins. All of these oddities make the 1982 quarter a hot target for collectors. So what exactly should you be looking for? Start with the mint mark. If your 1982 quarter has a clear D for Denver or a P for Philadelphia, take a closer look. Is the mint mark doubled? Is it placed oddly or missing entirely? That's your first clue. Next, examine the coin's condition. Because no uncirculated mint sets were made in 1982, finding a quarter from this year in mint state condition, especially MS 65 or higher, is extremely rare. Most 1982 quarters that have survived are well worn. A coin with sharp detail, original luster, and minimal wear is already considered a prize. Now let's talk about the weight. A standard 1982 Washington quarter should weigh around 5.67 grams. But due to planchet inconsistencies, some quarters from this year were struck on heavier or lighter planchets. For example, a quarter weighing 6 grams or more may have been struck on a leftover silver planchet, a rare error that turns an ordinary coin into a numismatic gem. Also, keep an eye out for die varieties. A double die obverse, DDO, or reverse, DDR, could dramatically increase the coin's value. Look closely at the lettering, especially Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. If any of the letters or numbers appear doubled or shadowed, you could be holding an error coin worth thousands. Then there are off-center strikes, broad strikes, and even wrong planchet errors, all of which make your 1982 quarter much more than just spare change. The reverse side of the coin features the classic eagle design, wing spread, clutching arrows, with 2 olive branches below. While it might seem like a standard image, variations in strike sharpness and alignment could indicate another minting anomaly. The deeper you look into 1982 quarters, the more you realize how chaotic that year was for coin production. And with chaos comes opportunity, especially for the lucky few who discover rare varieties. Now, you might be wondering, okay, I get it, it's rare. But how rare? And what's it actually worth? Well, here's where things get exciting. If you come across a 1982 Washington quarter that's in pristine, uncirculated condition, especially one with a unique mint error like being struck on the wrong planchet, or with a rare double die, you may just have something incredibly valuable on your hands. In fact, one such example, a high-grade 1982 quarter featuring an exceptional error, authenticated and graded by a top-tier coin grading company, was once sold at auction for a staggering $160,000. Yes, you heard that right. $160,000 for a single quarter that was originally worth just 25 cents. So before you toss your change into a jar or spend that old coin without a second glance, take a moment to look at the date. Check the mint mark. Feel the weight. Inspect the details. Because there's a chance, however small, that your everyday quarter might actually be a treasure in disguise. That's the magic of coin collecting. Hidden gems are out there. History is in your hands. And sometimes, the most ordinary objects turn out to be extraordinary. Today, we're diving into one of the most interesting coins in American history, a coin that most people wouldn't look at twice, but those in the know? Well, they understand the massive potential it carries. We're talking about the 1967 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that might just be lying unnoticed in your spare change or tucked away in a dusty drawer. It may seem ordinary on the surface, but under the right conditions, it can be worth far more than you could ever imagine. So don't blink, and don't skip ahead, because by the end of this video, you might just be checking every quarter you own with a magnifying glass. Let's set the stage and go back to 1967. The United States was in a moment of intense social and economic change. The Vietnam War was escalating, civil rights movements were reshaping the nation, and at the same time, a quiet revolution was happening in the world of American coinage. It was a pivotal time for the U.S. Mint, a moment where policy, economics, and public behavior collided. Just 3 years earlier, in 1964, the Mint had removed 90% silver from dimes and quarters due to the rising value of silver. Too many people were hoarding coins for their melt value, and the government needed a solution. That solution? Introduce clad coins, made of copper and nickel instead of silver. By 1965, silver was gone from circulating quarters. But here's the twist, the Mint was still struggling to catch up. To prevent hoarding and manage the massive coin shortage of the mid-1960s, officials made several bold decisions. One of the most critical. From 1965 through 1967, no mint marks were placed on U.S. coins. That's right, whether the quarter was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, there was no mint mark on any of them. That fact alone makes the 1967 quarter unique. It stands out in U.S. numismatic history as part of an unusual 3-year experiment during the Coinage Act transition period, but that's just the beginning. The 1967 Washington quarter, like its predecessors, features the familiar face of George Washington on the obverse side. Above him is the word Liberty, and to the left, In God We Trust. The date, of course, 1967, sits clearly at the bottom. Flip the coin over, and you're greeted by the powerful image of a bald eagle, wings outstretched, standing on a bundle of arrows with 2 olive branches below. This imagery was designed to convey both peace and strength, core values of the American spirit. Now let's talk about what makes the 1967 quarter so special for collectors. The first thing is scarcity in high grade. Because these quarters were never included in official mint sets, and because they were intended strictly for circulation, most 1967 quarters show heavy signs of wear. They were workhorse coins. They were used daily, passed hand to hand, jingled in pockets, and scraped through vending machines. Finding a 1967 quarter in pristine, uncirculated condition is not just rare, it's exceptionally rare. Even fewer exist in mint state 65 or higher, with clean surfaces, full strikes, and brilliant luster. But here's where it gets really exciting. Some 1967 quarters display minting errors that have become legendary among collectors. We're talking about double die obverse and reverses, where lettering and numbers show distinct doubling. Off-center strikes, where the coin is not aligned properly and appears skewed. Wrong planchet errors, where the quarter is mistakenly struck on a coin blank intended for a different denomination, such as a dime or even a foreign coin. Clipped planchets, where a piece of the coin is missing due to a mishap during the cutting process. And perhaps the most fascinating, the transitional metal errors, where a 1967 quarter was accidentally struck on a silver planchet instead of a clad one. If you find a 1967 quarter that seems unusually heavy, say, around 6.25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, don't dismiss it. That could be a coin struck on a leftover silver blank. These coins are exceedingly rare, and when authenticated by grading services like PCGS or NGC, they've been known to sell for eye-popping amounts at auction. And let's not forget about coins with proof-like qualities. These are quarters that somehow, despite being minted for circulation, exhibit an exceptional level of detail and mirror-like surfaces, probably due to being struck with freshly prepared dies. Collectors and dealers alike are constantly on the lookout for 1967 quarters that check any of these boxes. And if you're lucky enough to find one, well, you could be sitting on a goldmine. So, what should you do if you suspect your 1967 quarter is special? Step 1. Weigh the coin. A standard clad quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. If it weighs more or less than that, something unusual could be at play. Step 2. Examine the surfaces carefully. Use a magnifier to check for any doubling, unusual die lines, or off-center features. Step 3. Check the condition. Even a standard coin can be worth much more than face value if it's in superb condition. Coins graded MS-65 and higher are prized for their rarity and beauty. And finally, if you believe your coin might be valuable, get it professionally graded. A grading from a respected agency can validate its worth and open doors to auctions and serious buyers. Now, here's the moment you've been waiting for. One of the rarest versions of the 1967 Washington quarter, featuring an extraordinary mint error, preserved in near-perfect condition, and authenticated by experts, has sold for a jaw-dropping $180,000. That's right, $180,000 for a coin that started its life as simple pocket change. A coin you might have walked past or spent without a second thought. This is why we explore. This is why we search through jars, pockets, and old rolls of coins. Because the next great discovery might be waiting right under your nose. Today, we're cracking open the story of the 1971 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that has passed through millions of hands over the decades, often spent without a second thought. But what if I told you that in rare cases, this humble little piece of metal, something you might overlook in your change jar, could be worth a jaw-dropping fortune? Yes, you heard that right. There's more to the 1971 quarter than meets the eye, and in this video, we're going to explore everything, from its historical backdrop and design, to what makes certain specimens incredibly rare and sought after by collectors. And stick around, because at the very end, we'll reveal how much one of these seemingly ordinary coins actually sold for, and the number will absolutely shock you. Let's start with a bit of context. The year was 1971. America was in the midst of cultural transformation. The Vietnam War continued to stir national tension, the space race was heating up, and television was becoming the central source of news and entertainment in American homes. Meanwhile, in the world of coinage, the U.S. Mint was churning out billions of coins to meet the growing demands of the economy. The Washington quarter, a familiar piece of American change since 1932, remained a staple in pockets and purses everywhere. But by 1971, the silver content was long gone. Starting in 1965, the Mint had transitioned quarters from 90% silver to a copper-nickel-clad composition, a sandwich of copper core and nickel outer layers. This was a result of silver prices surging in the early 60s, leading to hoarding and melting down of older coins. So, by 1971, all quarters were being struck in the new clad format, but even in this era of mass production, not all quarters were created equal. Now let's talk about the coin itself. The obverse side of the 1971 quarter features the unmistakable profile of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan. It's been used since 1932 and continues to represent the stability and enduring legacy of America's first president. The inscriptions, Liberty and In God We Trust, sit prominently, with the date, 1971, at the bottom. Depending on where your coin was minted, you might find a tiny letter, the mint mark, just to the right of Washington's ponytail. Here's where it gets interesting. In 1971, the quarters were minted at two primary facilities, Philadelphia and Denver. Quarters minted in Denver feature a small D mint mark. Philadelphia minted coins from this year do not carry a mint mark. This was normal for the time. But what if the mint mark is missing when it shouldn't be? Or appears in an unusual location? Or is doubled? That's when collectors start paying serious attention. Let's move to the reverse of the coin. You'll find the famous heraldic eagle design, wings spread, arrows in talons, symbolizing America's strength and readiness to defend. Below the eagle are two olive branches, a nod to peace. Above it all, the words United States of America and E pluribus unum. And right below the eagle's feet, $quarter. Clean, classic, powerful, but the beauty of the 1971 quarter lies not just in its design, but in the details, those tiny imperfections or abnormalities that turn a 25-cent coin into a six-figure collector's item. Let's talk about errors and varieties. Some 1971 quarters were struck on improper planchets, meaning the blank used for the coin wasn't the correct metal or weight. Some have been discovered struck on nickel planchets, dime planchets, and even foreign coins. These errors happened when leftover or misfed blanks ended up in the wrong press. Other coins exhibit striking errors like off-center strikes, where the design is skewed and missing part of the image. Double die obverse, where letters or numbers appear doubled due to die misalignment. Broad strikes, where the coin isn't properly seated in the collar during striking. Clipped planchets, where part of the coin is literally missing due to an incomplete blank. Then there's the holy grail of 1971 quarter errors, full silver planchet strikes. Remember, by 1971, silver quarters were a thing of the past. But mistakes happen. Every now and then, a leftover silver planchet from 1964 or earlier was accidentally fed into a machine meant for clad coins. When a 1971 quarter gets struck on one of these rare planchets, you're looking at a once-in-a-lifetime find. So, how can you tell? Start by weighing the coin. A regular clad 1971 quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. A silver planchet weighs closer to 6.25 grams. That small difference can mean the world to collectors. Next, check for luster and color. Silver coins have a warmer, more satiny tone compared to the dull gray of copper nickel. And finally, have your coin professionally evaluated. Grading companies like PCGS or NGC can confirm its authenticity, assign a grade, and drastically boost its market value. Now, let's talk about condition. Like all coins, the value of a 1971 quarter skyrockets with better preservation. A coin in mint state 65 or higher with a sharp strike, no visible wear, and clean surfaces is already hard to find. Add an error or rarity to the mix, and you've got something truly exceptional. And here's where things get exciting: rare 1971 quarters with errors, high grades, and unusual minting qualities have made waves at auction. One example, featuring a significant mint error and preserved in nearly flawless condition, caught the eye of top-tier collectors. The bidding was fierce. Offers rolled in from around the world, and in the end, the final price, that quarter, yes, just one 1971 Washington quarter dollar, sold for a staggering $187,000. Imagine that, a single quarter, possibly resting in someone's change drawer for decades, ultimately turning into a life-changing payout. That's the magic of coin collecting. That's the thrill of the hunt. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? Check your change. Inspect every coin. Weigh them. Study the mint marks. Learn what makes a coin unique. Because the next legendary quarter might already be in your hand, and you just haven't looked closely enough. Today, we're diving deep into a coin that has quietly fascinated numismatists for decades, the United States Washington quarter dollar from 1972. This quarter may seem like just another piece of change, but if you pay close attention, you'll discover some incredible stories and astonishing values hidden in its tiny details. So, buckle up, because by the end of this video, you might be looking at your spare change with entirely new eyes. Let's begin by understanding the world that surrounded the minting of the 1972 Washington quarter. The early 1970s were a time of change and challenge for America. Vietnam War protests were ongoing, the economy was in flux, and cultural shifts were reshaping the nation's identity. In the middle of this vibrant yet turbulent era, the mint produced millions of quarters to keep commerce flowing smoothly. The 1972 Washington quarter features the same timeless design that has adorned quarters since 1932, the profile of George Washington, the nation's first president. This design, created by John Flanagan, symbolizes stability and history, and it's instantly recognizable. The obverse shows Washington's dignified portrait, with the words, "Liberty," and the phrase, "In God We Trust," and, of course, the date 1972 right below. Depending on which mint produced your quarter, you'll find a small mint mark to the right of Washington's ponytail, a D for Denver or a S for San Francisco. Quarters from Philadelphia in 1972 generally don't carry a mint mark. Flipping to the reverse, the classic heraldic eagle spreads its wings, clutching arrows and olive branches. This image represents the strength and peace that the United States embodies. The inscriptions, "United States of America," "E Pluribus Unum," and "Quarter Dollar," complete the composition. Though the design is classic, it holds centuries of symbolism and pride. At first glance, the 1972 quarter seems pretty ordinary, but the world of numismatics teaches us that extraordinary value often hides in the tiniest anomalies. The 1972 Washington quarter has several rare and fascinating varieties and minting errors that have propelled it to legendary status among collectors. One of the most famous is the double die error, an occurrence where the coin's design is stamped twice, but slightly misaligned. This causes the letters, numbers, or details to appear doubled, sometimes dramatically so. The 1972 double die obverse quarter is a superstar in the coin collecting community because of how bold and visible this doubling can be. On this coin, you'll notice the doubling most prominently on the inscriptions, "Liberty," and the date. The effect is unmistakable and can skyrocket the coin's value by thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, of dollars. Another significant variety comes in the form of clipped planchets and off-center strikes. These errors happen when the coin blank isn't correctly fed into the press, resulting in coins with missing edges or incomplete images. Such errors are prized because each one is unique, nature's own coin misprint that can never be perfectly replicated. But that's not all. Some 1972 quarters have been found struck on planchets meant for other denominations, such as nickels or dimes. These planchet errors are particularly sought after because they're rare and defy the expected norms of coin production. One of the most astonishing finds involves coins struck on silver planchets. While by 1972 the quarters were no longer made of silver, occasionally, old silver blanks left over from earlier years accidentally found their way into the press. A 1972 quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet is an absolute rarity. These coins display a distinct silver shine, weigh more than their clad counterparts, and can command a serious premium in the collector market. Of course, the condition of the coin plays a massive role in determining value. A quarter showing heavy wear from circulation might fetch just a few cents above face value. But those preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition, particularly ones graded MS65 or higher, can be worth exponentially more, especially if combined with one of the rare error types. Collectors and investors know the value of provenance and certification, which is why professionally graded coins from reputable services like PCGS and NGC sell at premium prices. Grading not only authenticates a coin but also assigns a numeric value to its condition, which directly impacts the coin's market price. Now, you might be wondering just how valuable these coins can get. Here's the jaw-dropping part: certain 1972 Washington quarters, particularly those exhibiting dramatic double-die errors or rare minting anomalies in top condition, have sold at auction for an astonishing price. In fact, the highest recorded sales of these rare specimens have reached an eye-watering $194,000. Imagine that, a single quarter, once pocket change, now worth nearly $200,000. This is the magic of numismatics, discovering incredible value where others see only everyday currency. So next time you come across a 1972 Washington quarter, take a moment to inspect it closely. Check for any doubling on the lettering, unusual edges, or shiny silver tones that don't belong. You might just be holding a hidden treasure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of the 1972 Washington quarter dollar. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more treasure hunts, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a chance to discover your own numismatic gold. Have you ever found a rare coin in your collection? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp and your pockets jingling. You never know what fortunes await in your change. Happy collecting.